I love it.
You had a very busy 2 weeks.
Tell me
All of
about
us did.
We all did.
All of us did.
You know what? That's a great sign. That we're committed Jews, and yeah, it's a great sign. That in spite of the fact that some people think, oh my God, I had too much of Judaism the last 2 weeks, you are here to study more Torah, and I thank you for it. I don't take it for granted.
Never enough.
Thank you too.
Thank
I
you.
love that attitude. Thank you, Helen. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. It's 9:00. And I thank each one of you for being here. Marie and Helen and Diane and Rebecca and Mara and Natalie and Brad and Sandra. And welcome, David, just coming in.
Hello. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So I always have so much to give you. And at the end of the class, I get frustrated that I didn't give you everything I wanted. But I do realize, one of the things I did that on the high holidays, right? That we look back and see what can we do better. So instead of preparing a lot, I prepared 2 themes for today. And I hope to cover both. But if not, you know my attitude, God willing, next year. So, so first we'll say the prayer for studying the Torah, and I'd like to do, as always, the introduction. I think of God as continually following as a flowing fountain of blessing and holy teachings. As a person with free will, I can choose to align myself with God's wisdom or try to hide from the profound teachings that could guide me daily. When I say a blessing with sincerity and study words of Torah, I am choosing, once again, to align myself with ever-flowing goodness of God's love. Well, of course, it ties in with the topic I've chosen for today. But let's do the blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי
Torah.
Yeah, and it's la'asok with a K at the end.
Oh, la'asok.
Yeah, to make ourselves busy with the study of Torah. Okay. So if you be so kind and to put yourself on mute, I'm going to provide you with the overall look at the Torah portion, and then I'll tell you why I chose what I've chosen as topics to discuss today together. So Parashat Ha'azinu, Parashat Ha'azinu is a prayer poem that Moses presents to the people of Israel just before he ascends to Mount Nebo. In English, we call it Nebo, but in Hebrew, it's Nevo. It's the bet is without the dot in the middle. That's why it's a sound of a V. So it's Mount Nebo, where he will die. Moses will die. In these verses, Moses declares that God's deeds are perfect and just, and God is never false, but always true and upright. He warns against those who act dishonestly against God. He tells the Israelites to remember their history and their special relationship with God, who guided their ancestors and cared for them despite the many times they turned to idolatry. God, Moses declares, could have obliterated the Israelites many times for their disloyalty, but decided against doing so. Just at least their enemies assume that Israel's destruction was their doing rather than God's punishment. Indeed, says Moses, it is God who constantly saves Israel from destruction. It is God who deals death and gives life. God, Moses concludes, will bring vengeance upon Israel's enemies. And Moses warns the people to take to heart all the Torah and its laws and to teach the laws to their children. The Torah is in your very, very way of life, he tells them. And though it was, if you shall long endure, if you obey them. Moses is then told to climb Mount Nebo, from which he will be able to see the land of Israel. There he will die without entering the land. Punishment for what? For his anger at the waters of Meribah Kadesh. Very, very difficult topics. And obviously, one topic that really screams at us, the topic of good and evil. And the ultimate, I've taken a very difficult topic to discuss with you because I myself struggle with it. So okay, so who would like to please read? And I'll tell you specific verses, because those are the ones that I'd like to touch. So we are in Etz Chaim. If you have Etz Chaim, it's 1185. And if you don't, we are in chapter 32, Ha'azinu, in Deuteronomy. I'll give you a minute. So I prepared two topics. One is called Moses, looking at Moses's character, is looking at the two worlds that Moses was living by. One, the Egyptian world that he grew up in, and one, the Jewish world where he was sent to liberate. So Moses is the in-between these worlds, and these worlds are very, very tough because I claim that Moses' homeless life is without a home, even in his death. In other words, Moses had a very hard time living in the world of the Egyptians and the world of the Israelites, of the Jews. But I have to think about this, because if Moses had such a hard time, why was he considered the greatest prophet? He spoke with God. What else do you need? That is like the ultimate holiness that Moses can encounter. And yet he was homeless even in his death, because many times Jews want to be buried in Israel, even though they're living in the diaspora, right? Moses was not given even that blessing to be buried. So I was questioning, was God that mean? Moses didn't have a good Moses had a very hard time leading the Israelites. We know they were rebellious. We know they were stiff-necked. Why was he punished so severely that even his bones cannot go there? We know Jacob was buried, even though he was in Egypt, he was buried in Israel. Joseph, even he was in Egypt, he was buried, he was taken. They were both taken to be buried in Israel. And yet Moses was not. Moses, did it ever bother you, Rebecca?
Um, yeah, it used to bother me, and I always cry at the end of Deuteronomy because
Me
it
too.
feels so sad. Um, but I don't think he would have found any rest had he crossed the Jordan. I think even just if we believe in the afterlife, I don't think his soul would have been at rest.
Okay. Okay. All right. But why was he punished for his bones not to be taken, just like Joseph and Jacob, to be buried in Israel?
Same thing, same premise of the soul still residing.
Okay. Okay. Natalie?
Within the bones, I guess, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Natalie? And
Perhaps
then David.
God felt if Moses went, that's the
A
only
little
one.
louder, honey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Perhaps God felt that if Moses had gone, after all, Moses was the only one people could touch and see and know, that he would become the God to the people. And that was why he wouldn't let him go.
You mean,
That the people would have thought Moses was God and looked to him as they looked to him when they did in the desert. Because
well,
he was the one they could see. They couldn't see God. They couldn't touch
right,
God.
right,
This was very mysterious for everyone. Think about it. If we were all in that situation, how in the world would we believe any of this?
right, right.
Right?
Okay, that's a very good answer too. Thank you. David?
Nobody lives forever, and it's important that there be a transition of leadership. So even though Moses lived for 120 years, God wanted the people to know that there would be a transfer of leadership, and in this case to Joshua. And God made sure that Moses transferred power, so to speak, in front of all the people so that they knew it wasn't a power grab. They knew it was with God's blessing. And so, with every and all leaders, it has to come to an end. However, what troubles me about this portion is that it's God punished Moses. So it wasn't as if, I guess the underlying thing is maybe the transfer of power. But why not just say, even though you disobeyed me, I want to make sure that the Israelites go on. You're not going to be able to live forever. So, uh, and I don't know if there's an answer why he punished God. And then the ostensible answer was at Meribah and striking the rod and, twice and instead of talking to it. But it seems that's pretty harsh. And so, I see why it troubles us.
Okay. All right. What I'd like to share with you, what some of the commentaries are saying, in Midrash Rabbah, one of the commentaries is saying that Moses denied burial in the land because he was failed to acknowledge himself to be in the land. In other words, he did not identify himself with the land of Israel. Okay, compared to, okay, when he talks about, I'd like to read to you exactly what the Dvarim Rabbah is saying, this Midrash saying. Said Rabbi Levi, Moses said before the master of the world, the bones of Joseph entered the land, but I can't ever enter the land. The Holy Blessed One said to him, one who acknowledges his land is buried in his land, but one who does not acknowledge his land is buried in his land. From there, where do we know that Joseph acknowledges his land? His Potiphar's wife. Remember the mistress, Potiphar, who claimed that Joseph raped her, and she took his coat and proved that, and then Joseph went into prison. Remember that scene? Okay, so when she said, see, bring us the Hebrew men, it's from Genesis 39. And Joseph did not deny that he was from the land of Israel, that he was a Jew. She said, I was stolen from, Joseph said, I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews. That's from chapter 40. So, but when you, God continues, but when you did not acknowledge your land, you will not be buried in your land. So when daughters of Yitro, an Egyptian man, saved us, they said, from the shepherds. Remember in Exodus 2, when they are at the well and they were not able to open the well, the top of the well, and other people started, picking at the women. Moses was the one who moved the top of the well off, and by that, the daughters of Yitro said, an Egyptian man saved us from the shepherds. And he hears remaining silent. Moses remains silent. He did not change the Yitro daughters to say, I'm a Hebrew. He remained silent, which means he was, at that moment, he was in the world of the Egyptian life he had. And in a way, rightfully so, because he was raised in Egypt, right? So, and he spoke Egyptian and so on. And yet they talk also about the language. Very interesting. When Moses meets God in the burning bush, he says, I'm kvad pe vekvad lashon. I'm heavy in my language, in my tongue. So the rabbis, of course, jump on it and they say, was he really a stutterer? And then, of course, there is a story to that. How did he become a stutterer? But the question with the rabbis is, was he really a stutterer or did he mean something different? And what is the difference is? The difference is that Moses, when he said, kvad pe vekvad lashon, I'm heavy, I cannot speak well, he really meant that, again, he was in between the two worlds. Was Egyptian his main language, or was Hebrew his main language? Which one of these two? You understand? If he cannot speak, if he cannot go before Pharaoh and speak to him, hello, Pharaoh was your stepfather. He helped you being raised to be a prince. How can you not feel comfortable enough to go and speak before him? So the rabbis explain that at that point, he was already, can you hear this? No, okay. The rabbi explained this, that he was able to, Moses was able to speak fluent Egyptian and fluent Hebrew. But which one was he more fluent at? How many years did he spend in Egypt? And how many years he spent as the leader of the Hebrews? And by the way, is it possible that after 200 years of slavery, the people themselves, the people of Israel, which language they felt more comfortable, Hebrew or Egyptian, after 200 years in Egypt? You understand the rabbis' dilemmas? So when Moses says that I cannot speak, is it because of the language or is it because of his identity? Did Moses see himself more as an Egyptian or more as a Hebrew? So when we know what causes Moses to run away, when he hits and kills the Egyptian, he definitely felt like a Hebrew. Or did he feel like, I'm in power, I'm in prince, this is wrongdoing, and I'm going to kill this guy? Issues of identity, right? So it's very, very difficult to look at Moses, at his complex character, and still being able, I'm able to see both sides of Moses, both as an Egyptian and as a Hebrew, both as a prince and the son of slaves, which carries a different baggage altogether, and put it on a scale and still feel sorry for him. Did God expect Moses to be perfect? Question to each of you. Mara?
I could try,
So
you
I've,
know,
I've been listening to what you've been saying, and I've also been looking at the end of this parsha. And so it says, because ye trespassed against me in the midst of the children of Israel,
Right,
um, because ye sanctified me not,
right.
thou shalt see the land afar off. And I'm thinking about, we've just gone through Yom Kippur,
Uh-huh.
and I don't recall hearing Moses at any point say, I did wrong, that I'm turning back to you, God. And so seeing the land afar off and not being able to go into the land seems to me the result of Moses not choosing life.
What do you mean
So
by that?
it's not it's not just God's choice to not let Moses go into the land of Israel. It's Moses's choice, because Moses has not said, yes, I did wrong at the waters of Meribah, um, and I will do better. I will return to you, God, as we're asked to do at Yom Kippur,
Mara,
to admit to our
fabulous.
failings, to say, I will return to you, I will do better, I will repent. I don't see Moses doing this.
That brings up a very wonderful question also. What is the purpose of teshuvah? Did Moses have like we, asking for teshuvah, right? Did Moses have the opportunity to go back when God told him twice that you are not going to enter the land of Israel? Did Moses have the opportunity to do teshuvah, what he has done in the past, like each one of us? You understand my question? If there was an opportunity to do teshuvah for us, if there is an opportunity for us to make and to believe that we are able to do teshuvah and the decree will annul, right? In other words, that we would live for another year. Why did Moses did not have that opportunity? Moses,
Why do
the
you say
greatest
he
of
did
prophets,
not have that opportunity?
because you just said he did not say he was sorry to what happened in Meribah.
But he had that opportunity to say that he was sorry.
but it's not happening. Right? So did Teshuvah always exist? Because we believe there are certain things that existed before creation of the world. Teshuvah is one of them. Asking for forgiveness is one of them. Right? And Moses did not have that opportunity, or maybe he had the opportunity and he didn't take it. But okay, we'll come to it in a minute. David?
Didn't Moses ask God, why can't I enter the land, or question God about it in Deuteronomy, or
Yeah.
at the end? And one other thing tied into that, didn't Moses blame the Jews for a lot of things instead of placing blame on his point? So the first is question I don't know the answer to. I thought he not pled with God, but asked him again if he could enter. And then the second part is what I just mentioned.
Right. So he says it twice, yes. And both times God says no. But so my question is can we see God as compassionate, at least showing Moses the land of Israel, even though he's not going to enter, but at least showing it to him that this is the land that everybody will enter. Go up to the top of the mountain where you're going to die, and you're going to be gathered. This is very important also. You're going to be gathered just like your brother Aaron to your ancestors. So, yeah. So is that sense of compassion God feels towards Moses after all? Rebecca, I see your hand up.
I'm not going to answer that part. This is such a deep conversation. I just love it. I want to go back to the aspect of Moses being a prophet, because I really don't understand the roles of prophets. Is a prophet supposed to repent? Is that part of their being? I mean, I hate to say this, but I'm taking this class through Emeritus called Bible as Literature, and we look at Old Testament, New Testament. Right now, we're in the New
Don't say Old
Testament.
Testament. Don't say Old Testament. Say Hebrew
Okay.
Testament. Thank you.
Okay. Even
Your
when
identity.
okay, even when Jesus was on the cross, he said, "Why, God, why are you doing this to me?"
Yeah.
And I consider Jesus a prophet, and so if Moses is a prophet also, I'm not sure exactly what the role of the prophet is in Teshuvah. Is that even part of what their role is?
Excellent question. So let me try to answer this wonderful question. Prophets are supposed to say whatever they channel in is God's words, right? And of course, this is why we have issues with Abraham hearing God, the Akedah story, right? Of sacrificing his child, but I don't want to go there. I'm coming back. So prophets supposed to channel whatever God says to them to say, whatever words comes into their mouth, they have to say it. If that is the case, and you are correct, Rebecca, then why does he even have to come to a space of apologizing? Because he says whatever God says to him to tell to the people, except in the water of Meribah, Moses did not do what God told him, right? God told him to speak to the rock, and he hit the rock. There was a difference. And what happens with that is obviously speaking the words without touching the rock would have been a lot more powerful for the people who needed these slaves who needed proof of God's existence. So the words would have been a lot stronger. The moment he hit it and water came, it was And it was explained to the people as the power of Moses, because he hit the rock and water came out. He didn't speak to the rock. You see, by doing action, they thought it was the hitting part that created the water. So Moses did not do exactly what God said to him. So he channeled the words, but he did something different. So that's the easy. Let me just say, because we are talking about identity, I would like each and every one of you, it's a sticky point for me. When you say the Old Testament, when one says the Old Testament, that means it's old. It's not as important. It's old. When we say the Hebrew Testament, we say exactly what it is without reference to old and brand new. Okay? Just remember that. Thank you for that help.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard, you have your hand up.
Well, I have to comment about what words we should use. And I'm reminded of Galileo when the Catholic Church told him what he had to say and what he had to not say, that the earth moves around the sun. And he said, well, okay, but it still moves. I mean, you can't tell, you're trying to do re-education or propagandizing people what kind of language they could use. I don't go for that. I mean, the language has words in it and they have meanings. The Old Testament is a commonly is a part of the English language. I mean, I always say Hebrew scriptures. I never say Old Testament, but I certainly would not demand that anyone else follow that.
Well, I'm accepting what you struggle with, but I'm saying that all those people who study seriously, and I would say researchers and so on who study seriously the Bible as a whole, refer to it as the Hebrew Testament. And it's not only the 5 books of Moses, but it's the Hebrew Testament. So
Well, it can't be all because it's a commonly used word.
that's correct. And that's
Mhm.
one package. You cannot separate one from the other. It's one package. It's the Hebrew Testament, even though Christians using much of it, and that's okay because Jesus used much of it. So, okay, I'm accepting your struggle. You deal with it any way you like. All right. Any comments on Moses's double life, the Egyptian life that he struggles with, and the Hebrew life that he struggles with? So I would like to conclude this topic and say that there is one thing that is sense for us that we can learn from it today also. The fact that the Moses, is buried in the diaspora and not in the land of Israel, what does it teach each and every one of us who live in the diaspora and by a plot to be buried in the diaspora? Anyone? I can share that it was a very hard decision. We bought a plot to be buried, I would say close to 25 years ago. And when we initially did, my husband and I did our will, we were in our 20s. And because we had children then, we wanted to make sure that the children were taken care of if something happens to two of us at the same time. So, Baruch Hashem, thank God, I'm here to talk about this. And my children are grown, and thank God brought me grandchildren. So we don't have, over the time, we have changed our will. But one of the sticky points that my husband and I had, where am I going to be buried? Being an Israeli, right? Raised in Israel. served in the army in Israel, and after the army, I came here. Where is my identity? You know, am I more Israeli or am I more American? So that was a big issue before we made the decision. I'll tell you in a minute. Because in my bones of bones, I feel that I'm Israeli. But Americans see me as Israeli, right? But I have lived in Israel for 20 years. I've lived here 56 years. So what am I more with time? Am I more American or am I more Israeli? So when I travel to Israel, they see me as an American. When I'm here, people see me as Israeli. Issues of identity. So what do you think I did? Did I buy a plot in Israel or did I buy a plot here? Risa, I don't see you.
You can't see me. You can't see me because I'm having trouble with my camera.
Go ahead, sweetheart.
But you have to answer your question first, and then I'll tell you what we did.
Okay, thank you. So I'm putting you on hold there for a minute. David?
Assuming your children and your grandchildren are in the United States, I would guess that you and your husband decided in the US.
Thank you. Good reasoning. Anyone else? With the split like Moses in a way, what did we decide? This is actually a decision that I can make. God didn't make it for me.
Well, my aunt had, my mother's aunt has a child and grandchildren in the United States, but she wanted to be buried in Israel, which she is.
Yeah. So I'm going to be buried here for the same reason that David said. My children and grandchildren are here, and I don't see them making aliyah, fortunately or unfortunately. But my husband wanted to be buried here, not too far from where his parents are, at Mount Sinai near the zoo. And so I'm going to be buried with him. We're in the same plot, in the same slate, not next to one another, but in the same. So, yeah, issues of identity are very serious. And words, Howard, are very powerful. And we need to decide which way we're going to go. How is it going to affect my decision today? How is it going to affect generations to come? You know, Risa?
Well, that last question is how we decided. We had plots in Atlanta, and we buried my parents next to those plots. So now we have a problem because we don't have a family area anywhere in the United States. We're spread all over the place as a family. Some are in Boston, and some are in Chicago, and some are et cetera, et cetera. So after we made Aliyah, there was a big discussion. And we had friends in Atlanta who were willing to buy our plots. And we bought plots in Israel in a small cemetery, which is populated by many retired Reform rabbis who made Aliyah.
Okay.
And the reason was passing it on to the generations. We're not so interested in who's going to be visiting the graves in the United States. We're interested in the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren understanding where our hearts were. And our hearts have been in Israel. Zionism has been our center of our lives, even though we have lived in the United States most of our lives. The minute that Stanley and I both retired, we made Aliyah because that's where our hearts were always. And it was very important. So our legacy has been Zionism, the love of Zion. And you must go to Israel and you must love Israel. And the fact that you have to come to Israel to see our graves, or when you're in Israel, you know to see our graves, now you know who we were. So on our graves is written, and we're the same as you. We're up and down, and well, he's down, I'll be up, and his stone says his name. It says his birth and death. It says his date of Aliyah, and then it puts his favorite saying, "Choose life."
Beautiful. Wow.
And we're doing the unveiling in a couple of weeks.
I'm sorry about your loss. Yeah. Yeah. So you are actually calling in from Israel?
I'm going to Israel in a couple of weeks to do the unveiling.
Oh, okay. I didn't understand that. I thought you're living in Israel. You did Aliyah.
We made Aliyah. We lived there for 12 years. He got sick. We came home. He passed away. We went to Israel to bury him. And now we're going back to do the unveiling.
So you are living here now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, okay.
Sure, I'm here.
Lisa, in the power of words, I want you to know that you said after he got sick, we came home.
Yes, we came home to the children
The
because
US
we were alone in Israel because we were the only rabbinic family that had made Aliyah that did not have children in Israel, and our kids were going crazy, so we came home, and now we're home. The final home had to be in Israel.
Okay. All right. I understand, but this is also living in struggle because you
Yes,
call the US home. You don't call Israel as home.
I did when I
Final
lived
resting
there.
place,
Yes,
or the
yes,
final resting place of your home
absolutely,
for the
absolutely.
future, for the
And
kids.
now we've lived in many different homes because Stanley was in a lot of different pulpits. And everybody says, if you had to go back somewhere, if you wanted to live somewhere in all those places you've been, the only answer is Jerusalem.
Thank you, Risa. Thank you. Brad? And Brad will be the
Well,
next one, and then we'll go hopefully to the
yeah, Rabbi, I just want to thank you so much for this discussion because you're shedding a light on something that I was blind to. I didn't at all see this as an identity issue, and it just reinforces to me um, the theory of receptivity in literature,
Mhm.
that we don't know the intent of the authors, whether this be God or humans. All we know is the way we receive it.
Mhm.
And you've received it very differently than I've received it
Oh,
reading this text.
thank God.
And I just find that I mean, what you've seen and the fact that you've shared this with us, I think it's so wonderful that we have the opportunity to hear how other people are experiencing the reception of this text, because I never in my wildest thoughts would have thought of identity as an issue here.
Thank you for that comment. But you all see it now, right? Moses was living between two worlds, right? In the moment that Moses was living in two worlds, an issue of identity. And when do I speak up? When am I choosing to be silent? You know, when Moses had the opportunity to speak and defend himself, that he's not an Egyptian man who saved Yitro's daughter, that he was not an Egyptian, that I am a Jew, he decided to be silent. But so did Joseph when he was identified as a Jew, as a Hebrew. He remained silent. And the question, of course, another one that begs to be asked, in light of what Risa's comment was, that does that mean that only Jews can be buried in Israel? Or does that mean the Jews who identify with Israel cannot be buried in the diaspora? So you are you are very correct, Brad. It brings up a lot of issues. Mara?
It just struck me as Brad was speaking that when you go back to Moses striking the rock, that's his Egyptian identity. That's the taskmaster striking the slaves.
Interesting. Very good.
And that's what's so wrong.
Very good. But we were talking what Rebecca has said about the role of the prophets. As prophets, if they are channeling God's words, and therefore he did not showed that God was in power and not him. P.S. That's why Moses is not in the Haggadah. Only God is in the Haggadah. The rabbis try to make the imperfect perfect because Moses didn't do it when he should have, right? So now Moses is out and God is in to show all the miracles that God has provided for Israel in spite of the golden calf. David?
But after the incident at Meribah, Moses still was able to come face to face with God, and God still communicated with Moses. So he didn't cut Moses off for not obeying him. Why was that?
That is perfect. And this is where punishment has to come with mercy. And we've studied that all throughout these high holidays, the high holidays, right? So when we talk about evil punishment and mercy, we absolutely have to remember Teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah, right? Teshuvah, prayer, and tzedakah temper the din, temper the decision of God, right? This is where teshuvah comes in. And this is where I struggle that, Moses did not do teshuvah, and therefore he's not going in to Israel. These are tough topics, but one of the things that I wanted to talk to you, and it will be, God willing, for next year, is thank you so much for the discussion. Seriously, thank you. So one of the things that we have to talk about next time is if God's ways are always just, because that's what Moses says, right? God's is just. And what happens with evil, right? What happens with evil? So when Moses says in verse in chapter 32, verse 1 to 3, right? Which, by the way, as a child, I had to learn 20 of the verses by heart because it was that important. 20 of the verses of Ha'azinu. And I went to an Orthodox school in Israel. And so when God is just, I'm looking at the verse 3, right? Moses pleads to God, and he says in verse 4, God is rock, his deeds are perfect, and yes, his ways are just. God is faithful, never false, and true and upright he is. Is there a space for evil? Is there a space for bad things to happen to good people? You understand? If God is so just, and we'll talk about it, God willing, another time. But this is something that all the philosophers, Jewish philosophers and interpreters, everybody talks about that. And of course, the literature post-Holocaust talks about that too. So I'd like to give you, I don't want to leave you hanging. I don't like it myself. So I'd like to tell you what Maimonides is saying, because he rejects, Maimonides is rejecting that the idea that I was bad and therefore I deserve punishment, right? So it brings up all the innocent, the 1.5 million children in the Holocaust and so on. It brings out the suffering of the innocent, the suffering of the good, right? So Maimonides rejects that I was bad and therefore I deserve it. Interestingly, also the mystics, Judaism's mystics, reject this idea of crime and punishment, right? I wasn't good enough and therefore God punished me to bring me back to his source. That is not, okay? So the mystics say that when God created the world, God created a lot, both evil and good. But what happened when God created the world, much of the evil was spread all around, and the light was trapped inside the evilness. And what all that light wants to do was to be revealed, to be taken out of the prison of the darkness. And this is where we, each and every one of us, have to do in order to bring light out of the darkness. By doing mitzvahs, by helping one another, we are actually, according to our mystics, liberating the light from the dark spaces that God has created also. Now, there is a story, a Hasidic story, that says that there were a person who said to God, I'm sure some of you know this. I don't want evil to exist anymore. I don't want bad things to happen to good people. God, please answer my plea. So God says, no problem. You don't want evil? No problem. You don't want anything to happen? You want the world just the way it is right now? And the man said, yes, this is good world. Okay, no problem. And then after a while, the man noticed, I'm not telling the story well. After a while, the man noticed that children were not born. And life went on. People got old, but life went on without new births. And then he said to God, you know what? We need to have both. And please bring the world back the way it was. That evil and holiness exist. But again, this is where our part is. Our part is to reveal and liberate the darkness, the light from the darkness. So I will take both of you, Brad and then Howard.
Well, Rabbi, you're kind of minimizing the role of punishment here. And to me, it's inextricable. I mean, we've just been reading a book of blessings and curses. And this is the ultimate curse that Moses receives here. I mean, it's a moral tale. It's telling us that even somebody with all the attributes of Moses can be punished. And that's a warning for us. And that's and that's what the Torah leaves us with, that warning. So that we
But not-
too will be. If Moses can be punished, then what's going to happen to us if we don't follow the mitzvot?
Well, that's exactly what it is. And it doesn't end that way, but it says, it says, continue to, I'm looking at the last component of the last part of our Torah service, that it says that it's not, it's, your life depends on it. So that it says here in chapter 32, verse 47, for this is not, uh, trifling.
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 Thank you. Things for you. It is your very life. Through it shall long endure on the land that you are possessing upon crossing the Jordan River. In other words, it's not only for you, it's for your children. So you are correct about the lessons for life. Howard, you'll be the last one, and then we'll do the Kaddish.
I'm thinking that just for
A little louder, honey.
Hmm?
A little louder.
Louder, sorry. We ought to also consider that in Exodus, it says opposite, that God tells Moses to strike the rock, and he's not punished. So, and I would definitely attribute that to that these are two different sources, the E source and the P source, written at different times with different perspectives. One of them, Moses is deprecated, and the other one, he's more perfect, more favored.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all what?
Aren't we all sometimes perfect and sometimes totally not?
So far, I haven't noticed that, but by myself, but I still have a few more years, but it's going to be a struggle.
God willing, we'll have a few more years.
Right.
So, loving hugs, and thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. Thank you, everyone. So I'd like to do the Kaddish. So I noticed that some people had some losses and would like to express that. Please share with me who are you saying Kaddish for?
Beth Hershenson.
Thank you. Okay, so let's rise and we'll say Kaddish for Moses and we'll say Kaddish for our loved ones who are no longer with us. Okay. יתגדל ויתקדש ברבה, בעולמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעולמה ואמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. May we all remember, that's another thing, that another topic for this week, Torah portion, the power of remembrance. May we all remember our loved ones with kindness and love. Amen. Have a blessed week. Toda rabba. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. God bless.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Thank you.